Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mr. V's Camping Chair Chat. My name is Mr. V and I'm currently sat in a camping chair on the grass on the exit of Chapel in the Assetto Corsa version of Silverstone. Why? Well, why not? I just fancied a holiday. I've set a number of classic F1 cars going around and also one Generation 1 MX-5. I don't think he has much of a chance, but he's having fun, okay? He's enjoying himself. They're going around in the background. If any of them crash into me throughout the course of this podcast, well, I guess I have gone to Assetto Corsa heaven. In that case, for those of you who are listening to this audio only, you're probably wondering, what is he talking about? Just go with it. Just go with it. We have just had the 2024 Singapore Grand Prix. The original night race in Formula 1, and this one certainly made me want to go to sleep. It was a slow race. For those of you who listen to this and maybe don't watch the full race and then use it to decide, should I watch a replay of the race? Should I watch that back on a Monday evening? No. No. This was just not entertaining. To be honest, there was a couple like pit stop strategy things up and down the grid, but realistically, a very run-of-the-mill race. We'll get onto that at the end of the podcast, but thankfully, even if the on-track action in Formula 1 is a bit dull on any given weekend, the off-track action never is. There are always so many storylines to cover, so we're going to be covering quite a lot of them today. First things first on the podcast, at the very end of last week, I mentioned a little thing I noticed on the rear wing of a McLaren going down the main straights of Baku, which was the front of the DRS, like moving element, sort of lifting up. That actually got picked up by many news outlets throughout the week, people talking about the mini DRS of the McLaren, and also was talked about by multiple other Formula 1 teams. So I should clarify, I'm not saying that I instigated the discussion. Multiple other people noticed it during the race. I'm not saying that I am the person who kicked this all off, but yes, multiple other teams got on the action, put in a clarification request to the FIA, and very quickly the FIA during this week came back and announced that they have made a ruling on this. So I'll just read to you the wording of this decision for clarity. This is actually from a technical directive from the FIA. Designs whose structural characteristics are altered by secondary parameters so as to produce a different deflection characteristic than when stationary during the FIA checks are illegal. And they go on to clarify examples of secondary parameters could be temperature, aerodynamic load, etc, etc. So basically what they're saying is, if we do the check on your wing and we pull down on the back of it and it bends in one way, if then in the race we notice it's bending in a completely different way, you can't do that, don't do that. That's obviously exactly what was happening in McLaren's case. And so, pretty clear, McLaren are not allowed to have that wing anymore. I think that comes into effect immediately, basically. What do I do with this? I think that comes into effect immediately, basically. So McLaren could not run that wing this weekend if they wanted to, but they wouldn't want to because we had only seen this effect on McLaren's very skinny, shallow Monza wing, as it's put. They use it in a few tracks, Baku as well, notably. That's the only time we'd actually seen this mini DRS effect is in their low downforce package, which obviously you would not run in Singapore, one of the highest downforce tracks there is. They're normal, they're steeper wings that you see more of the time throughout the year that produce more downforce and more drag. No one has noticed this effect happening. Maybe it was happening a tiny bit and the FIA has clamped down on that as well. I hadn't noticed it and I hadn't seen anyone else picking up on this. So it affects them for their low drag setup, which you would expect to see again maybe in Vegas, Mexico as well coming up. So it could hurt them there with their top speed performance, but I don't think it's going to hurt McLaren too much because even without it, they are incredibly fast. We'll get onto their pace in the race. Not a spoiler, Lando Norris won, didn't even break a sweat. That is a metaphor. He broke much sweat because this was Singapore, the sweatiest race of the year. So that's the first piece of news. McLaren mini DRS. No, bad McLaren, that is illegal. Second piece of news, a bit of an interesting one, which brought up a debate from sort of the start of this year and the start of the last couple of years. RedBull came out at the very start of this week and announced the special livery they were planning to run. I was about to say special fan-made livery, but I don't actually know if that's true. But they were planning to run a special livery for a couple races now towards the end of the year, including Singapore. and they said they had to cancel it because it added too much undue weight to the car, affecting the performance of the car. And I guess, it's a close technical battle for the constructors, so every little helps. What? Your special livery is too heavy, mate. What the hell? So it kind of sparked a bit of a debate, which people had brought up at the start of this season with lots of the carbon liveries and also in seasons previous, due to the frustration with the lack of colourful paint jobs on the cars the last couple of years, in that should cars have a sort of paint weight mandate? Should that be a thing? I can understand the arguments for that. People saying, oh, if you say the paint has to weigh 2 kilograms in total, I don't know how much paint weighs in total, but let's say the paint has to weigh 2 kilograms when covering the car, it will prevent the teams from doing these full carbon fiber liveries. Maybe, but personally, when I look at a suggestion like that, from an engineer point of view, it raises lots of other questions like, what is paint? Will it mandate coverage of the car? Like, will it be a physical area has to be covered? Because if you just say you have to have 2 kilograms of paint, well, then the teams could just do one massive, blob, effectively a piece of ballast, stick that where it's favorable, and be like, there is 2 kilograms of paint. It's stuck to the underfloor. You can't see it, but it's there. So then you'd have to go into rulings of, when viewed from this angle, all visible surfaces must be covered in paint. But then it's like, what's paint? Because you could just put a clear lacquer on the car. For me, it raises way too many questions, and I don't think it gets around the wider issue. I said this earlier in the season, teams want to run distinctive liveries. They want their cars to be seen because they cover their cars in sponsors and they sell those sponsorship spots. So if your car is more memorable and people look at it more and notice it more on screen and, buy posters of it and merchandise or whatever, your sponsor spots are worth more money. So teams want to have a good livery. They want to be distinctive. They want to have a strong brand. Mandating something on that, I don't think is going to help. They would run the colourful liveries if it favoured them. And putting a rule in place, I don't think will go and stop them if doing a non-colourful livery also favours. Do you know what I mean? They're just going to get around the rule anyway. It's just going to cause more problems. I basically make the cars smaller. Several steps down the line, just make the cars smaller. If the issue is with weight, why do F1 cars weigh close to a ton at this point? Get them back down to half a ton, make them smaller, make them lighter, make the racing better. But anyway, I don't think any kind of ruling is going to work on this. We kind of just have to take what we're given. The cars will look how they look. And clearly, Ferrari can paint their entire car bright red. So it can be done, and that Ferrari, kind of quick. Don't know if you've noticed. Some other special livery news. Mercedes come out with a special livery, which is, it's a Petronas special livery, but the Petronas colour is it's a tealy green. They have that stripe down the side of the car. It turns out when you paint the whole car that colour, it looks a little bit like an Aston Martin, which is just an odd choice. Obviously, Mercedes must have known this when they made their initial renders of this to, I guess, show to Petronas for approval. Someone surely would have looked at this and gone, that's an Aston Martin. We've made our car an Aston Martin now. Should we run this? And then they said yes. They decided yes, that was fine. Just kind of weird. A little bit confusing watching the race every time it cut to a Mercedes. And I was like, oh, Alonso's in a good position. No, that's George Russell. Just a bit odd to paint your car in a livery so close to another team's livery. Imagine if Red Bull did a special red, a racing red, like a Red Bull. But then imagine if the car was all red with some black and yellow accents. That would be confusing. So just a bit of a weird one. And then final livery news of the week. If you didn't see it, the Visa Cash App RB Formula 1 Hugo Boss double denim. What? So basically, if you haven't seen it, and if you're listening to this audio only, I shall paint you a picture with my words. Imagine you took the RB, which is quite a sleek car, silver elements, white, some nice mid kind of royal blues, Take all the blue bits and replace that with a JPEG image of some denim. Then you're going to want to Photoshop on some denim rips. You know, like when you get like jeans and they're ripped at the knee, you're going to want to Photoshop some of those on just randomly on the side pods. No specific placement. It kind of makes your car look like it's broken, like Stroll's front left wheel has gone through your side pod. So put a couple of them on. And then you're going to want to Photoshop on a massive zip down the side of your car, because jeans have zips, I suppose. So VCARB did that, and that's the thing. I think the numbers were made to look like they were sewn on, and they're also made of denim. Yeah. In a way, stroke of genius from VCARB, because now, for decades to come, when Formula One list makers and publications need to make their off-season top 10 tier lists to keep the people interested, and they're going through their top 10 worst liveries, or top 10 most unusual liveries, or top 10 most gene-like liveries, you can't leave out the VCARB now. That car is immortal from this point onwards. It's up there with the weird, BAR, with the split down the middle thing. It's up there with like the Earth car. This is an immortal car now. People will, in 200 years' time, the names Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Red Bull will all be forgotten, but we will all remember the Visa Cash App Red Bull Formula 1 Hugo Boss double denim car. So I guess just thank you to RB for this marketing masterclass. You are truly 2 steps ahead. Or not even that. They are currently in the 2032 season. The regulations have changed. The cars are much slower then. That's why they're at the back of the grid. But they are many, many years ahead of us. Let's move on. Let's move on from the jeans car. Some actual more impactful news. Earlier in the week, FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem came out and said that FIA is looking to crack down on bad language used in Formula 1 broadcasts. Primarily, this is aimed at drivers over the driver radio, particularly when they're in the cars, but really just language in general. There was rightly some backlash just generally towards this statement because, firstly, he was kind of racist when he said it. I'm not going to go into that. But it's a weird thing as well, because these drivers are driving the fastest cars in the world in some pretty stressful scenarios. Take Singapore as an example. Hot, sweaty, walls, fast, night, it's hard. They're doing a sport. They're at the very top of their sport. It's physically intense. If you're just trying to drive a car into like a parking space in a supermarket car park, I imagine there's times when you get frustrated and you potentially start swearing at other people. Now imagine your car goes 300 kph. I think it's quite normal that drivers every now and again are going to swear down their radio. And the FIA is saying, oh, we don't want this, and we're going to start fining people potentially when this happens. No, don't do that. Obviously, if you don't want to broadcast on swearing, just stop broadcasting the radio then. This one really gets to me because it's part of a wider sort of clamp down from the FIA to really bring the sport in line, make it very squeaky clean, very goody-goody, very advertiser-friendly. I don't want to use the word authoritarian, but it is quite authoritarian. The FIA likes to have a lot of control over not just what happens on the track, but over the entire lives of anyone who steps onto that track. I don't like it. It's oppressive onto the drivers. Sometimes, and it depends really on your upbringing and your vocabulary, it's very hard to control swearing. Swearing has a different, psychological response to normal speech. It has a pain-killing effect. It has a stress-relieving effect. There's a reason people swear in stressful situations, because it helps them to concentrate. It helps them to get through. It can help to, align your emotions. You go through a corner and someone bashes their front wheels into yours and you almost go into the wall and get your car torn in half and die. That's stressful, and sometimes you need to be like, oh goodness no, oh me, oh my, oh crap. It helps you. I don't like it. If the FIA didn't want people to hear drivers swearing, stop broadcasting it. This kind of then came to a head very quickly when in driver interviews on Thursday, I want to say, the kind of like weekend warm-up interviews, Max Verstappen was asked about his pace in recent races and whether he thinks the title battle is still alive, that kind of thing. And he gave a little answer, but one segment of the answer was to the effect of saying, our car is fucked. He said it. It's not an inaccurate statement. It's still a pretty good car, you know. It's not like it's a Sauber, but it's not as good. It's not as dominant as it used to be. Fair enough statement. He's the one driving the car. He would know. FIA immediately called him to the steward's office and handed him a penalty of community service. The actual wording was an act of public benefit to be coordinated with the, I think it's with the like sporting director of the FIA. Some basically has to be an FIA related free activity. You know, he might have to be a steward for another racing series, or he might have to, I don't know, serve lemonade at the prize giving ceremony at the end of the year. That would be weird if he was the F1 champion and then had to go work behind the bar. But stranger things have happened. Community service for saying the car is fucked in a press interview is just a very silly situation which should not be happening. This is Max Verstappen, prodigy child, one of the greatest Formula 1 drivers to ever do it. Don't call him up for like a word he said in an interview. Just get away. Just leave him alone. Get in line, FIA, right? Just check yourself. Check who you are. You are not some all-powerful god. You're not like the government of some country. You're not the school superintendent looking after some children. You are there to time the cars going around the track and make sure that everyone brings a technically legal vehicle to the race. You issue race documents, you tell people where the DRS zones are, yada, yada, yada. You run the sport. You are not some big brother entity who is like shepherding these stupid little drivers around to make sure that they, you know, put on a good marketing show for your sponsors. Go away. Stop. Nobody likes this. Stop. It's going to be interesting if anything more comes out of this. It became a bit of a joke throughout the paddock this weekend. This also happened at the start. People were joking with Max and with each other, saying that, oh, can't say anything, going to get fined. Max even protested this in the post-qualifying interviews, obviously the top three, of which he was one of them, get called in to sit on the sofa and do their interview. And he was giving these very short, to-the-point answers, very Marshawn Lynch style, I'm just here so I don't get fined. He was giving one-word answers. He was asked whether he wants to elaborate. He would say no. He even said to a reporter, I'll answer your question outside the room, but I don't want to answer it in here in case I get fined. Quite a clear protest, and I didn't actually watch it, but I saw some reports that he did the same thing in the post-race interviews. Good on him. Good on him. Please protest it. Make a mockery of the FIA, and they should back down, because FIA has fully overstepped the mark here. I'm not going to be unbiased on this one. FIA is fully wrong in doing this. This should not be a thing. You know, if a driver is being harassing to another person, or if they're being, you know, racist or something on the radio, that's bad. They should not do that. Obviously, that should get a penalty. If you make a remark just saying, my car is bad, but you choose a different word instead of bad, get out of here. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Oh, kids watch the show. It's a sport where people can crash and die. Can we remember that? Can we remember that? The stakes at play here. I know there's a big push to make this very kid-friendly. If a child watched Lando Norris burn up in a fireball, that's not going to be very kid-friendly, is it? But it is a possibility. Can we please remember what sport we are watching? This one really gets to me. I'm sorry. I'm going to move on. Final sort of like weekend build-up point of note. Daniel Ricciardo is in the rumour mill again, people saying that this is potentially his final race in Formula 1. There are rumours saying that VCARB was going to announce Liam Lawson in the Azerbaijan weekend. That obviously didn't come true, but then the rumours started up immediately saying that they were going to announce him at or following the Singapore weekend, i.e. now, to basically be in the RB following this new break we have. This is not officially called the summer break, but we have a break now as long as the summer break. people saying that Lawson is going to be in the car for the next race in Austin, of all places, one of Daniel Ricciardo's favourite venues. Absolutely brutal. As of the time of recording this, about 8 p.m, I have seen no news to confirm whether this is true, but there are a lot of signs, particularly in Daniel Ricciardo's body language and sort of the course of the weekend, that indicates this is a very strong chance, is how I'm going to put this. Maybe when you're watching this on Monday, it's already been announced. I don't know. He came into the weekend looking relatively happy. He spent the entire weekend being asked this question. Is there some news coming? Do you have a seat for the next race? Are you going to be here till the end of the year? What does your future look like? Can you give a comment on your time in Formula One? Are you going to get another race seat? Blah, blah, blah. And that clearly wore him down, because by Sunday, that man was looking glum. He was looking like cartoonish, frown on his face. He was having a bad time. The race sort of compounded that. I'll cover the race in more detail kind of after this, but Daniel Ricciardo basically, RB didn't put him on a particularly good strategy. He found himself at the back of all the cars still racing, thoroughly out of the points, nowhere near the points. And so RB decided to pit him and go for the fastest lap with 1 lap remaining in the race. Now, from a purely like statistical, cynical point of view, if this wasn't Daniel Ricciardo, if they'd done that with Yuki Tsunoda, and people are going, why have they done that? It does make sense to do that, because Lando Norris had the fastest lap at that point, and obviously RB is part of the Red Bull family. Lando Norris in a title battle with Max Verstappen, RB doing their part to help out Big Brother team, take a point away from their title rival to help Max Verstappen come Abu Dhabi secure that title. That makes sense. Take a point away from Norris. It's only 1, but the points add up. If they'd done it with Tsunoda, people would just gone, oh yeah, the orders came from Horner to take the fastest lap point away from Norris. Because it was Ricciardo, though, there was some speculation that the team was trying to give him some kind of parade lap for his very final lap, his final race in Formula One, to give him a fastest lap, and also a venue lap record, I want to say, which is kind of cool. Obviously, Singapore's become quicker in recent years with the removal of the grandstand section, so Daniel Ricciardo does have the race lap record, which is kind of a cool record to have. It might only stand for 1 year, but still. Was this a farewell, a parade lap for Mr. Ricciardo? Time will tell. By the time this podcast comes out, there may even be some news to confirm or deny this. Time will tell. I think it's safe to say either way, Ricciardo's days in Formula One are numbered. He's had a quiet season, honestly. He hasn't lit the RB up. He hasn't taken the world by storm. If he was demolishing Yuki Tsunoda, scoring regular points, dragging that RB to places it shouldn't be, similar to, a Hulkenberg or an Albon, then yeah, there would be a discussion of putting him back up into the Red Bull. He's just had a sort of an okay season. Does it make sense for him to stay in Formula One? He had all this success in the 2010s, and he even said it himself in a post-race interview. His goals coming back after the McLaren time were to get another seat in a front-running team and to, have the fairy tale ending, have the chance of success one more time, win some more races, potentially go for one more title, or go for a title one more time, should I say. That hasn't happened. He's in a mid-table team. There doesn't seem to be any opportunities for him to go to a top-of-the-table team, and he doesn't seem to have the performance to merit that either. Sorry, there's a police car going past. Does it make sense for Daniel Ricciardo to stay in this sport? I don't think so. I'm sure I've said it to death, but he may as well go to NASCAR, go to IndyCar, have some fun, Daniel. So, let's get on to the on-track action that after this quite glum news roundup, but that's just the week that we had. Qualifying and then the race. So qualifying actually was relatively exciting. If you want to watch any on-track sessions from this weekend, qualifying would be the one to watch. Couple interesting storylines there. Playing into the Ricciardo last race story, he did not have good qualifying out in Q1 P16, I want to say. it just didn't look good. He didn't have the car hooked up. Yuki Tsunoda, I think in Q1, put the car in the top 10 with Ricciardo going out. It's not a good look. Sadly, it plays into the argument that he should be leaving the sport. He's just not there. In Formula One, you need to be on every weekend. You can have a couple bad weekends in a year. Maybe you have tonsillitis, maybe you're ill, maybe you have a death in the family. You can have a couple off weekends where your performance is just a bit meh. You can't be up and down week on week and every other week be going out in Q1 in a car that really should be through to Q2. I'm not passing a judgment on Ricciardo's, whether he should be in Formula One, but going out in Q1 doesn't help. Some other people going out a bit too early. In Q2, Sergio Perez, another driver whose career definitely is under question. Maybe he has some more job security due to his sponsors. Qualifies in P13 behind both Williams. He qualified behind Franco Colapinto in his third race in a Williams. My guy, Mr. Sergio. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Editor, Mr. V, please can we have some kind of jingle, a banner on screen here that says Perez slander? Perez slander. Nice. Surprisingly musical. It's not good enough, Sergio. One very interesting quote, tying this into the previous story. Christian Horner was being interviewed by the Sky F1 team earlier in this weekend, and he was being asked about Daniel's future. And he said, quote, when he came back, Daniel was our banker if Sergio dropped the ball. He was saying this to say Daniel was our banker, but now things have changed. But that quote, Daniel was our banker if Sergio dropped the ball. He did drop the ball! Were you watching? Are we watching the same sport? Sergio dropped the ball back in 2023 at least, if not 2022, and he's yet to pick it up. He had a good race in Baku, still scored 0 points, and now he's back to his out in Q2 form. He went on to finish the race P10, so he did make up 3 places, and he did score points, 1 point. He's in a Red Bull. This team is fighting for constructors, but this fight should not be as tough as it is. They should be by far the favourites still to win the Constructors' Championship, but Perez just is not delivering. He's still not delivering and has not been delivering for years, literally years. It is crazy that people like Daniel Ricciardo are potentially now leaving the sport, and there are people who have never got into the sport, like Teo Pourchaire, like Drogovic, various other rookies currently in Formula 2 who are incredible. And Sergio Perez is still just driving around. He dropped the ball already. After qualifying P13, Sergio did get past Alex Albon at the start of this race, could not get past Franco Colapinto and was stuck behind him for almost half the race, and then spent the rest of it stuck behind Nico Hülkenberg in a Haas. It's not good enough. It's just fundamentally just not good enough. So we're back to a Perez form weekend for Perez, which is to say bad. We then get into Q3, usual suspects, McLaren, Verstappen, Ferraris and Mercedes, and we also had Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hülkenberg up into Q3, which is pretty cool to see. As people were just starting their first runs of Q3, Carlos Sainz, coming around the final corner to get up to speed and start his flying lap, bins it into the wall, drops the car, goes in backwards, takes the rear wing of his car, does not set a time in Q3, and also red flags the session. This brings us to a one-shot quali. There were 8 minutes on the clock. That is not enough time to do out lap, flying lap, in lap, change tyres, and then the same thing again. In theory, there was time to do an out lap and then do flying lap, cool down, and another flying lap, but that is not optimal, and the second one is almost guaranteed to be slower, so there's no point doing that. We had a one-shot quali, which was pretty exciting. Pretty good argument for Formula 1 maybe trying to change up its quali format in the future. Said this on stream, one-shot quali is fantastic. Formula E style knockout quali is also fantastic. All of these things lead to good qualies and mix up the grid for race day, which can make the race more interesting. It didn't. The race was still pretty boring, but it would have been even more boring if everyone lined up on the grid kind of processional as they should have been. Sainz bins it, sets no time in Q3, qualifies P10. We then get a one-shot quali where Charles Leclerc does not hook up a good lap. He's on a pretty shaky lap and was going to qualify somewhere like P5, P6. Actually crosses off-track limits anyway, gets his lap time deleted, also sets no time and qualifies P9. Two Ferraris, including Charles Leclerc, who is theoretically a title contender, on the 5th row of the grid. Ferrari now challenging for the Constructors' title. They're looking not likely to get it. McLaren is looking the most likely to get it, but they are looking like the second favourites to get the Constructors' title now. Rough qualifying for them. We had Norris on pole, Verstappen P2, title rivals in the fight for the first corner. Very spicy. Mercedes second row. Then we had Piastri alongside Nico Hülkenberg. Absolutely fantastic qualifying session for Hülkenberg. He was fast the whole way through Saturday and put a nice lap together in Q3 to put himself there. The fastest Ferrari-engined car of Saturday. Nico Hülkenberg in his Haas. And actually, someone in my Discord pointed out to me that Haas don't even have the latest version of the Ferrari engine. Haas is still using the 2023 Ferrari engine. I suppose for cost reasons, they couldn't afford the new one and they could get, a discount on the 2023 ones. It's like an end of season sale and you buy some like winter clothing. You buy like a Christmas jumper in January. They've done that with Ferrari engines. They still have last year's engine. Outqualified both the Ferraris. I think Leclerc would have been ahead of him, but still, fantastic from Hülkenberg. The people at Sauber, the people at Audi, just rubbing their hands together going, yes, this is our driver. Excellent from him. He did go backwards in the race. Still finished P9. That's 2 points. It's not bad. He was never really going to go forwards, was he? This is a track where you need to have a lot of pace compared to the car in front of you in order to overtake, or you need to get super lucky with the safety car. Hülkenberg had neither of those things, but still fantastic from him. So, heading into the race then, kind of the two main storylines were Norris and Verstappen out front, which quickly became a non-storyline because it was apparent that the McLaren race pace is significantly better than Red Bull's, at least in Singapore. Norris just drove off. He just drove off into the lead, and he was probably actually managing his tyre life in the first stint. Could have finished even further ahead, but at one point was 30 seconds ahead. He dropped back towards the end, and so was only 22 seconds ahead at the end. But that's still a lot, That's a lot. We also saw Piastri coming up from P5 on the grid, coming past both the Mercedes with relative ease. That McLaren has devastating race pace. It is really now McLaren's Constructors' Championship to lose, and it's also Norris's Drivers' Championship to win. Like, Verstappen is there, but realistically, Verstappen shouldn't be able to beat Norris in any given race. He should be coming P2 or realistically P3 behind Piastri as well, every race, considering the pace of these McLarens. This is Norris's championship to win if he can be consistent and just keep winning these races. We did see as well that the Ferrari race pace is also excellent. Starting from 9th and 10th, we had Leclerc coming through from 9th to 5th, gain of 4 places, and Sainz coming through from 10th to 7th, a gain of 3 places. Makes you think that if they had started 2nd or 3rd row, where they probably should have been, we probably would have seen one of those two on the podium. This is a very good track for Ferraris, and they had very good race pace. I think if Leclerc qualified P3, let's say, just behind Verstappen, he would have finished P2, which would have made everything a bit more spicy. Can't be doing that. Can't be doing that, Ferrari. Got to set some lap times in Q3. I've heard that's important. They obviously fall back from McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, but it stays interesting because they have the pace to keep McLaren honest. We like to see. I'm going to come on to one other thing, some kind of news of something that didn't happen in the race, weirdly. The lack of safety cars. So big news, this is the first time we have ever had a Singapore race without a safety car. It's not that surprising. It's a race where the drivers are losing litres and litres of water out their body and so are dehydrated and tired. It's at night. It's on the other side of the world. You've just come from Azerbaijan. It's quite a lot of jet lag in just a week. It's hot. It's humid. It's a physically intense race. It's also long. This is the longest race time-wise on the calendar because it is 300 kilometers, unlike Monaco, but has the second slowest average speed after Monaco. So it takes the longest to get to full race distance, sitting in the 200 mile an hour fiberglass sauna that is a Formula One cockpit. It's tough, and so mistakes are made. It's understandable. We get a lot of safety cars here, considering also there's no runoff. You just clip into walls all the time. First time ever, no safety car. People did touch the walls. K-Mag managed to hit the wall at one point and rip his rear tire off the rim. Just limped around, no safety car. We had a couple other instance people going off, Albon going slow, limp back to the pits. No safety car, no VSC, no nothing. Race just carried on for the first time ever, start to finish, normal, as it were, Singapore race. But it brought up some kind of odd stats from at least the Sky commentary team during the race. We had the stat that this is now 9 races in a row without a safety car, which I initially thought was kind of weird because I was watching the Azerbaijan Grand Prix not 1 week ago, and that had a virtual safety car. And as far as I can tell, 2 of the 3 words in virtual safety car are safety car. But apparently we've got 9 races in a row without one. Now, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. I know what they mean. They mean 9 races in a row without Bernd Maylander driving a physical safety car around the track. Okay, fair enough. That is true. We haven't had one of those since the Canadian Grand Prix, which, fair enough, is a long time. But Maylander is wondering, am I still employed? Like, if I just don't turn up, is anyone going to notice? I was checking because I was kind of curious about the history of safety car deployment and if we are now on the longest streak ever without the physical safety car coming out. So some quick safety car stats for you, which you may or may not find interesting. This is actually not the longest streak without a safety car. So I guess actually no, a bit of history. The safety car, as ubiquitous with racing as it is now, has not always been a thing. The safety car was only introduced as a full-time addition to the Formula One calendar in 1993. That's when we started permanently bringing a car to every track, which would sit there at the end of the pit lane in the event it needs to go out. Before that, we did have a safety car sometimes. It was sometimes there. The first time it was ever used was in 1973. Didn't really work that time. Look up the history of that. Kind of interesting. Quite hilarious. They kind of got it wrong. They didn't really plan for it, but there was a lot of crashes on track, and so someone was like, oh, mate, you've got a fast Porsche. Can you go out and collect all the Formula One cars and get them to slow down because they're not responding to the yellow flags well enough? And they tried that, and it didn't go great. So it took them 20 years to put it in as an official thing. But we have had a safety car at every Grand Prix since the start of the 1993 Formula One season. We have also had virtual safety cars since 2015, since the start of that season, which sort of plays into the numbers a bit. But since 1993, the longest streak without a safety car is actually 11 races, which has happened 3 times, unsurprisingly, all in the 90s. We have had a couple streaks at 9, the last of which was between the 2003 and 4 seasons, if my memory serves, because I prepared this all on my computer, didn't write it in my book. I'll put something on screen to confirm. 2003 to 2004. We are kind of used to, in modern Formula One, a safety car being a pretty regular occurrence. Every time now we see a car just really go into any gravel or touch a wall or anything, you kind of expect there to be a safety car, and that is probably for the best, for 2 reasons. A, for a safety reason. If someone is going slow, you can't be too safe. There's no such thing as being too safe. If a car is going slow, you really don't want a fast-moving car to hit them. That is bad for 2 people and just everyone, basically. Another reason as well is safety cars do make the race more interesting. They add an element of randomness to people's pit strategies and also just to the on-track action. They kind of It's a bit of a roll of the dice in the middle of a Grand Prix to shake things up. So I think people come to expect safety cars, and in a way, people come to want safety cars. I want to say it can feel like a bit of a letdown when you don't get one. I think I'm not wrong in saying that. So a period of 9 races without a full safety car does feel like a significant, not achievement, not milestone, but occurrence. For some context, in the 2022 season, we only had 3 races without a safety car. That includes virtual safety cars, but only 3 races were clear green flag conditions from lights to flag. Only 3 out of, 20-ish. Is crazy how many we are used to having in recent seasons. So to now go to over half this season having none, it feels weird. It feels like a sort of drought, like an accident drought, or at least a safety car drought. And I'm not going to say that the 2024 season is boring, because it's anything from boring. Thankfully, we are saved from a close technical battle and constructors battle. But in terms of these weird race storylines, and typically these storylines where we have a safety car or a red flag can lead to the kind of things where someone gets a unexpected win, an out-of-place car gets the front of the grid, like a fairy tale. Pierre Gasly winning Monza, such thing, would not be possible without some weird stoppage period. So while we have interesting on-track action, and I'm by no means saying that you need to have safety cars to have an interesting race, because, well, we've been proved that that's not the case in the last few races. It does feel... What do I feel? Not cheated, but it feels like Formula One is changing. It feels like lots of the unpredictability is being sucked away, because it's kind of part of racing that you get halfway round and then someone just yeets it into some Armco, gets stuck, has to limp out. You get some weird storylines where someone gets promoted up and then they're fighting to hold on to a podium place. And so while we've had interesting races with nice battles at the front, we haven't had as many of these kind of storylines which typically give a bit more of a spotlight to our midfield runners in the grid. Which in a way is a bit of a shame. Now, I'm not advocating for more safety cars. I'm not saying make the sport more dangerous. I'm not saying make the cars less reliable. I'm not saying this. Please don't, FIA, do something to cause drivers to have a crash. That is the kind of thing the FIA would do. Don't do that. What I am saying, though, it feels like Formula 1 is changing as a natural progression, but it does feel a bit sad in a way. I don't think this will continue. I don't think every season from now on we'll have over half the races with no safety car. It's a coincidence when you get streaks like this, and I think, we are going to have a couple before the end of the season. But I could see the overall numbers of safety car, like percentage of races per season, going down. Cars are getting more reliable, and also the driving is getting more reliable. Every year, the teams hone in on driver mentality, driver reliability. They pick up safer bets to drive their cars. They go through all numbers of simulations and best practices on pit stops and driver procedure before and during the race to make sure they don't make mistakes. They cover all kinds of scenarios. I would imagine drivers do simulator practice of things like starts and restarts. That may or may not be true. But DNFing a race has a cost. You don't want to DNF a race, so you may as well practice not DNFing. And as time goes on, teams just get better and better at this, and so logically, there would be less DNFs and less accidents and less safety cars. It's a natural progression of the sport in the same way that the cars get faster and they get more aero load and they get harder to overtake, and the racing changes, let's say, in that way as well. It's just a figment of the linear progression of time when applied to Formula One, which is worth note. And I think I will make a bit of a longer video about the sort of history of Formula 1 statistics, seasons with the most safety cars, introduction of virtual safety car, that kind of thing. I'll do some more to talk about that with some fancy on-screen graphics and whatnot in the green screen. But yeah, interesting statistics. Not entirely true when Crofty says 9 races without a safety car, because the virtual safety car, still a safety car. I get it. It's a digital full course yellow, but it's in the name, and so I'm going to count it. And so we come to our final segment, the same as every episode, Championship Watch. Editor Mr. V, please can you also add a little sort of jingle for this one? Championship Watch. Bit more aggressive than the previous one, but I guess it's fitting. So we're not going to cover Piastri and Leclerc as of last time. They both finished behind Verstappen, so they fall behind him they fall further away from him, let's say, in the Drivers' Championship. This one really hurts their already slim chances of winning the Drivers' title if they have another good race and Verstappen falls back. We'll talk about that again, but Norris versus Verstappen. So after the Singapore Grand Prix, Verstappen 331 points, Norris 279 points. I said last time that following Azerbaijan, Norris had to outscore Verstappen by 8.4 points per weekend if he wanted to win the driver's title. He outscored him by 8 points this weekend, which is good, but it's less than 8.4. So he is now 52 points behind, and we have 6 weekends to go. I would say races, but there are a couple sprint races as well. 6 weekends, which now means Norris has to outscore Verstappen by 8.6 per weekend. Sprint races help with that. If he finishes ahead of it, I mean, that's a 1-point gain if you finish first, second in that. But I guess sprint race 1-2 and a race 1-2 is outscoring him by 9. And then the fastest lap for Norris means 10. But as we've learned today, Verstappen has 3 people who can help him pit on the last lap and steal the fastest lap from Norris. So kind of tricky for Norris to get fastest lap, I would say, lots of the time. 8.6. Is this a likely number? He did not outscore Verstappen by 8.6 today. He did not outscore Verstappen by 8.6 in Azerbaijan. It sounds possible because, you know, the difference between... Wait, he only outscored him by 7 today. What am I talking about? Yeah, the difference between first and second is 7 points. I can do numbers. So it sounds doable because, you know, a first to third is a 10-point gap. So you're like, oh, McLaren 1-2, and then Verstappen comes third, 10 points a race, Norris wins. But as Azerbaijan showed us, sometimes you get Norris P4, Verstappen P5. And sometimes you get Norris P2, Verstappen P3, and Piastri wins, which is only a 3-point gap. So I don't think Norris has the consistency to win every race if Verstappen comes P3. Or, for instance, come P3 every race if Verstappen is coming P7. I don't think he has that kind of consistency. Caveat, all of this can change immediately if Norris wins a race and Verstappen DNFs. Let's say in Kota, Russell does the same thing he did to Sainz last year or 2 years ago and just doesn't stop into turn 1, into the side of Verstappen, takes him out of the race, and Norris wins. 25 or 26 point swing would immediately change the complexity of this title battle, like 100%. It would be completely different. They would be effectively 1 win apart. We would be having a different conversation. With the reliability we've been seeing this season, and with Verstappen's still godlike consistency, because he might complain about the car being slow, but whatever the maximum performance is in that car, he is still going to get it every single lap. That man is a robot. And that's a compliment. That's a good thing. That's cool. So yeah, Verstappen doesn't DNF, basically. His car might break down, but he doesn't DNF. And so Norris has to just massively outscore him. He needs to have Piastri also finish in front of Verstappen. I don't see it happening every race. Verstappen is just too formidable. And so, on current form, it's going to be close. It's going to be close in Abu Dhabi. I think we're going to get to Abu Dhabi with some kind of storyline of, you know, Norris needs to win with Verstappen P6, that kind of thing. But as previous seasons have proved to us, those never pan out. You know, Hamilton was in the same situation, 2016. You can't force someone to lose like 4 places. There's almost nothing you can do. So I think on current trajectories, we're going to get to Abu Dhabi with the title battle still open, but it's going to be one of these improbable scenarios. But then again, Abu Dhabi doesn't always go as you think it would. So it's still all to play for. It's a tough job for Norris, but it is still all to play for. We now have quite a significant break until the next race. Austin is at the end of October. We have 3 weekends off. The camping chair chat is not going anywhere. I mean, in a sort of metaphorical sense, it's still going to be available every Monday. Physically, I do plan to physically take the chair to places. As we have some weeks off, I actually have now more time to go out on the weekend and take the chair to a weird location to show you some stuff. So expect to see me in some strange places in the next few weeks, and we'll be talking about all the inevitable drama that will come up over this period, because unlike the summer break, the teams are not going to be shut down over this period, so the teams are still going to be working. There's going to be some technical stories. I'm sure there's going to be some driver market stories. I wouldn't be surprised if our driver market was all concluded by the time we get to Austin. Maybe the RBC anyway. Maybe Sauber, we're just going to wait till Christmas. There's going to be news. There's going to be some weird stuff. If there's no news, I'll just get a guest and we'll play a stupid quiz. So it's going to be fun regardless. Don't go anywhere. For now, though, I'm going to go to bed. I know you'll likely listen to this like in the morning on Monday or Tuesday, but it's very late in the evening. Despite how Silverstone looks behind me, actually it looks kind of sunsetty, doesn't it? But no, it's like it's late in the evening after the Singapore Grand Prix. Mr. V is going to call it a day there. So thank you guys for listening. As always, give the podcast a like down below. Give it a 5-star rating on Spotify or iTunes if you're listening on various audio-only platforms. In other places, just if you use the RSS feed, just sort of lightly clap. If you're in a private place, just sort of lightly clap. And if you're in a public place, you can just sort of give a, like a single nod. Just be like, that was cool. Thank you all for listening. I've been Mr. V. Who knows where the camping chair will be next weekend? You'll have to tune in to find out. See ya.